Okay, so we're going to have a quick look at fractions. Now, a good place to start is to discuss what fractions are, because that's obviously the foundation if you're going to be working with fractions at all. So, first of all, they just describe a part of something in the same way that decimals and percentages do. And you'll often be asked to convert between a fraction, a decimal, and a percentage. So, first of all, looking at fractions, if we look at this circle here, it's been cut into 4 pieces. If I was to shade in just 1/4 of it, okay, then that means that we shaded one part out of 4, so that's 1/4 of the whole circle has been shaded. Okay, so the top number is just the number of parts that have been shaded, which is called the numerator, and the bottom number is the number of parts the whole thing's been divided into. That's the denominator. Okay, it's important terminology that you need to try and remember. And again, in a similar way to we just saw how many we've shaded out of how many bits it's been divided into. If you look at this other one, it's been roughly divided into 8 pieces. If I was to shade in, say, 3 of them, they don't have to all be together, just how many there are. So I've shaded 3 parts of the circle out of 8 parts that it's been divided into. So therefore the fraction will be 3/8. Okay, so the numerator is 3, the denominator is 8. So a fraction is just describing how much of a whole thing. Okay, it's just a proportion. Now we look at some equivalent fractions. So sometimes we can have the same proportion of something described in a different way. So if we look at this circle here, it's been cut in half. If I was to shade half of this circle, okay, so I've shaded one part out of the 2 that are there. So obviously that's a half. Okay, but with exactly the same circle there and exactly the same shading, if I was to draw in another line, what we've shaded now isn't one part out of 2, it's now 2 parts out of 4. Okay, so 1/2 and 2/4 mean exactly the same thing. And if you look at the 2 numbers, what have you done to get from 1 to 2? We've multiplied by 2. What do you do to get from 2 to 4? You multiply by 2. So you need to multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same thing. It doesn't work with adding and subtracting. It can only be you have to multiply them by the same thing or divide them by the same thing. So in a similar sort of way, if we drew some more lines onto our circle, so now it's been divided into 8 pieces. Okay, so there are 4 bits that are shaded out of 8, which gives us 4/8 is also the same thing. And the same thing works again. We've multiplied the numerator by 2, and we've multiplied the denominator by 2, so those fractions are equivalent. And you could go on forever making new fractions that are worth the same amount but written in a different way. You could just keep multiplying by 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you want. You can multiply as high as you like. As long as you do the same to the top and the bottom, it's just like adding more lines into your circle, so they're still worth the same value. We can also rewrite them as decimals and percentages. Percentages just like fractions out of 100, and decimals could be effectively like a fraction out of 10 or 100 or 1,000 or so on. We'll move on to those shortly. Thank you for listening.